After this thought-provoking moment, I would like to dive deeper into the topic with this first panel session on the role of the CAP and nutrient management. But before opening the floor to our panelists, let me introduce Ludwig Herrmann, Senior Consultant at Proman, who will be joining me in the moderation of this first session. And Ludwig, I leave the word to you to introduce our distinguished panelists.
Thank you, Margherita. It's my pleasure to host you and to join you in moderating this event. And we have four panelists that all deal with nutrients. One who regulates the nutrients, one who uses the nutrients, one who sells the nutrients, and one who does research in the nutrients. And these persons are Stefanos Kirgagaslis from the European Commission, Anna Rocha from the European Landowners, Tiffany Stephanie from Yara, and Gerhard Roos from Wageningen Research. So these are the four panelists, and I welcome you all. And it is my pleasure to start the panel round by asking Stefanos the questions that we are normally asked by the research projects. What is the impact of the future CAP? And to talk about that, I think you first start with a short presentation.
A really inspiring discussion from Tassos Chaniotis, very nice. It's a really, I think we will have a lot to discuss on it. So I just wanted to add a few more elements in this discussion, and also how the CAP, not only the future one, but basically also the current one, because we need not forget about the current one before we start talking about the future one, contributes to the sustainable management of nutrients. Looking a bit back in February this year, we had the publication of the Vision for Agriculture and Food, which I think is the baseline with which we need to guide our further discussion on this. And it is clear that in its vision for the future for agriculture and food, the Commission focuses a lot on improving nutrients management at farm level, but also increasing nutrient circularity. And specifically when it comes to nutrient pollution hotspots, these need to be addressed also by promoting integrated territorial approaches. Specifically when it comes to livestock management, and we know that we have some negative externalities when it comes to them. When it comes to livestock, we should control the nutrients, but also support extensification in regions where we have high livestock densities. All in all, the Vision for Agriculture and Food reflects that reducing dependencies on fertilizers imports is a win-win situation for both farmers and the environment through the uptake of green fertilizers, but also focusing a lot on bio-based recycled fertilizers, nutrients such as Renure and digestates. Just to have a quick overview of some policy developments that have been happening lately. So as you all are aware of, the soil monitoring law has been recently endorsed by the European Parliament, which is a very good breakthrough. You are also aware of the Renure proposal, which is currently under scrutiny from the Council and the Parliament following the approval from the Nitrates Committee. The evaluation of the Nitrates Directive is ongoing, and it's very interesting to see what the conclusions will be. The Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive establishes minimum reuse and recycling rates specifically for phosphorus, and we will be expecting delegated acts coming up by 2nd of January 2028. And you are all aware, of course, of the chemical simplification package, including also for fertilizing products. I want to have just a quick overview now about the CAP. The current one for the programming period 2023-2027, where on the left-hand side you can see the budget. So basically today we have two funds, also known as Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. with a total budget of 386.6 billion euros. The big question that probably you have is how the CAP is currently supporting nutrient management. And we will start from a conditionality, which basically requires compliance to start with what we call statutory management requirements, those famous SMRs, which make sure that nutrient management respects EU law. And most notably, the two main legal requirements that are there are the Nitrates Directive, but also the Water Framework Directive. So on top of that, as a second layer, we have the standards for good agri-environmental conditions. So we have a set of standards, like, for example, standard GAEC number 7, which sets, for example, buffer strips, distances to be respected when it comes from water courses, when it comes to nutrients input. So this extra layer, if you want, of standards is ensuring that the management of nutrients is environmentally sustainable. Now, the thing is that this conditionality forms the basis for any CAP payment to be given to each one of the 7 million beneficiaries of CAP farmers. And on top of that, for any payment to happen, we have, eco schemes, which are funded under Pillar 1, and also we have agri-environmental and climate commitments, as also known, which are AECCs, which are interventions that are proposed for shared management and funding, both from Pillar 2, but also from national funds. So basically, those interventions are voluntary for uptake by the farmers, but these are designed based on a SWOT analysis from member states, and it's mandatory for member states to propose interventions for the voluntary uptake from farmers, which are related to the objectives of the CAP. And one of the objectives of the CAP, objective number 5, is relating also to nutrient management and sustainable improved use of natural resources. We also have investments that can support nutrients management, like, for example, the construction of manure storages is also supported by the CAP. And on top of that, member states needs to also to include in their CAP strategic plans farm advisory services that include also the farm sustainability tool for nutrients, the digital tool, but also include support for innovation, knowledge exchange through the AKIS system. And beyond that, we also have support through the CAP network, and also through support for further expanding innovation and innovative approaches for nutrient management, included through the thematic groups of the European Innovation Partnership for Agriculture. So this is what's happening currently when it comes to the CAP in its support for nutrient management. Now, for the future, whatever I say from now on is very much under discussion. So I should better put a big disclaimer saying that whatever I say now is not certain. So the discussion starts basically with the new MFF, where you can see on the left-hand side hand, where we have a total of 2 trillion euros under the new MFF. And as you can see, this blue part of the pie chart concerns what we call the Fund for National and Regional Partnership Plans, which include elements and instruments related to cohesion and regional policy, instruments related to the common agricultural policy, to the fisheries policy, but also elements that relate to defense and security, all in all totaling 865 billion euros. Of those 865 billion euros, we have 300 billion secured, or if you want, ring-fenced for farmers. And distribution of this amount of money is going to be based on the distribution that the current CAP will have among member states in the year 2027. In addition to this 300 billion euros, because as you can see, the interplay here, we have like 4 different policy areas that can be formulated based on the requirements and the priorities of the member states. It is possible that the member states can top up those 300 billion euros with additional funds, basically looking into innovation for leader projects, cooperation initiatives, but also other tools and instruments that can promote innovation or knowledge exchange, also when it comes to nutrients management. Basically, the elements that the new CAP will have are based on the elements of the current CAP. So we will have what we call today as conditionality will be changes its name basically, and it will be farm stewardship. And this farm stewardship will be conditional, compliance with this farm stewardship will be conditional for any payment to happen to any CAP farmer. And this farm stewardship will consist of our known SMRs, including, of course, for nutrients, the Nitrates Directive and the Water Framework Directive, but also the GAICs are now replaced by the protective practices. And the Annex 1 of the proposal of the new CAP includes in its annex those protective practices, which, however, can be further adapted by the member states according to the territorial needs. And this coincides a little bit, if you want, as well with the approach that the Vision for Agriculture and Food had when it comes to territorial approaches and integrated solutions. And on top of this farm stewardship, we will continue to have support for voluntary schemes uptaken by farmers, but in the form of agri-environmental and climate actions, or AECAs, which are the combination of what is today known as eco schemes and agri-environmental and climate commitments. We will also continue having the payments, the rest of the payments that you're aware of on investments, support for disadvantages resulting from mandatory requirements such as having a farm in Natura 2000 or Water Framework Directive restricted areas. And a quite interesting difference is also that it's probably possible for some protected farmers practice to be also supported by CAP funds. An interesting, of course, point here is also the recommendations that the Commission will prepare for member states, where they will, where we will have to highlight issues relating to environmental sustainability, climate change adaptation, water resilience, and highlight also, if you want, highlight the problems and possibly guide member states on further improving, also matching what was included in the Vision for Agriculture and Food for territorial approaches and integrated solutions. I think, however, I can stop here, and I hope I have given some information about the new CAP that might help for the further discussion that we have. Ludwig?
You would like to stop? Yes, I would not stop you, but I would repeat my question. So what do you consider will be the impact? The perception that you get from your presentation is that more decision power is shifted from the Commission to the member states. And if I see one pillar that includes defense and agriculture and fishery, and some concerns may be raised about what if a member state decides that all the money must be used for defense and nothing is left for agriculture. So really, what do you consider is the impact of this new regulation, of this new common agricultural policy framework, and to which extent is it still, how should I say, adaptable to the farmers and consumers' needs?
Yeah, look, I mean, as I said, it's not possible for a member state to give all the money to defense or all the money to fisheries, as we have already blocked 300 billion euros, of which 293 are from that fund, and another 6.7 are in case of market imbalances and to provide a safety net for farmers. But just to be very clear, the CAP already is in the power of the member states. Today's CAP strategic plans are developed based on the member states' identification of needs and priorities on the territories on the basis of the SWOT analysis. So they need to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And based on these separation, this discrimination, this approach, they need to identify interventions that will address their needs. For example, if a member state identifies that it has issues, for example, because it has a very high livestock density and it wants to give money for the extensification of its livestock, then it can give support. If it identifies that it has a lot of nitrate pollution in its waters, then it can focus more interventions into that side. The problem, Ludwig, is here is very good that the member states can design everything perfectly, but the real world is different. Will the farmer uptake this kind of intervention? Because you design an intervention and you tempt the farmer to uptake it by paying him money. And as Tasso said, this is area-based money. So the more area you have, the more money you get, obviously. But the thing is that will the farmer be tempted to uptake this kind of approaches? We have member states that are giving, for example, money for increasing the use of circular fertilizers, but is the farmer willing to use them? And as Tasso said, the farmer has very much connected the environmental with the economic impact of his doings. And I'm not so sure that any farmer will jeopardize his future income to use circular-based fertilizers without anybody convincing him that he will have the same amount of yield compared to his currently urea or any other chemical fertilizer he's using. So for me, the design will remain to the member state as it is today. There's no change. The only change is that we have, instead of two funds, will have one fund. We will have the recommendations. The names are changing, but the essence, if you want, is still there. The member states will be designing, and then it's up to the farmer to uptake.
Okay, thank you very much for this explanation. And I will now turn to Anna, who is one of the farmers' representatives and of the large farmers that we have in Europe. And I would like, Anna, what do you specifically expect in terms of regulatory benefits that come from the common agricultural policies for your nutrient management and for the nutrient management of your farmer colleagues?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Ana Rocha. I work for European Landowners Organization, and a small correction there. It's not a question of representing only the big ones. We have all types, and well, a difference is also that it's not only farming. We also represent other land users, being hunting, being on forestry, being on conservation. So it's a broad church. Going back to your question, and also maybe commenting first on Stefanos, it might not be a surprise if I say that I'm not as optimistic as he is when it comes to what member states will do, and they're told, but there's already a lot of flexibility, and it was up to them anyway to decide a lot of the rules that farmers have to comply with. It is true to a certain extent. Indeed, the CAP with the last reform moved towards this strategic planning, right? But there is a massive difference with what the Commission is proposing now, right? Because it will not be a dedicated thing for the agricultural sector. Now it is integrated in a much broader and more complex structure, which raises a lot of questions, namely questions of governance, of course, and budget, that too, because yes, there is ring fence, but we also know there's flexibility associated with some of them. So there's still a lot of questions. But on the governance part, it is a big one, because indeed it makes a difference if you have indicators and the performance focus on agriculture alone, or if actually this is now for all the types of funds, right? And we still don't know exactly if the member states will choose to have one competent authority or more than one. So there's a lot of questions. So yes, it makes me a bit less optimistic that actually member states will choose to stay as they are. Yes, in theory they can, but we also know that's a lot of budgetary pressure, a lot of political pressure, and especially yes, moving from an area that traditionally is European, right? That agriculture and fisheries are the two economic sectors that are regulated at EU level, now being integrated in much more objectives that probably have more political relevance national level than actually, and also experience too, than actually agriculture and fisheries can indeed lead to yes, having putting eggs in other baskets at the detriment of farmers and landowners, which are already normally the losers in this game anyhow, to the structural issues that they have. So yes, a bit less optimistic than Stefanos. And also, even on the ring fencing of the money, we're still not super sure because we still don't know the total amount of money we will have to play with that when member states agree, right? So we are optimistic that will be the 2 trillion, but some member states already mentioned that maybe less. But trying to focus more now on nutrient management. Yes, a bit more uncertainty on what is coming. Yes, there's, in theory, the same toolbox is there, but in practice, probably not. And first and foremost, even if we still have some of those tools, the money will be less, that we already know. And also the current context that Tassos also mentioned, it's much more complicated, right? And not only and also related to that, there's a lot of other policies that also impacting. So, for instance, now the CBAM, we know that that we're phasing in our rules in January. Are we ready for it? We know that the industry tells us, there will be impacts on prices. So it is affecting farmers already, right? At least my members are a bit nervous. So yes, in theory, a lot of things are still there. In practice, that's a big question mark.
Thank you, Anna. So not only that we have let's say a wider basket, we have also less eggs, as you as you correctly stated. And I thank you for this comprehensive explanation of what are the barriers for farmers in view of the forthcoming regulation and the forthcoming CAP, Common Agricultural Policy Framework. So now I think I'll give the chair back to Margarita, and Margarita will continue with the questions to the panel.
Thank you very much, Ludwig. Yes, so we have the pleasure also to have industry representative here today. So I would turn to Tiffany, Stephanie from Yara, and as we all know, Yara is a company committed in promoting nutrient use efficiency. So from your perspective, Tiffany, which are the biggest gaps between the current agricultural policies and the practical solutions that farmers need?
Thank you very much to you and to everyone for the possibility to join today. Indeed, we are not just selling fertilizers, but actually producing nutrients across Europe. To start with the discussion that has also been linking with the CAP negotiations, I won't dwell so much into the negotiations because it's very complex. But we must hear the reactions from farmers, and clearly, the current discussions are also showing that when we talk renationalization, limited funding, these are raising really serious concerns that I also would like to echo, especially when food security should be considered as an inseparable element from the broader Europe's security. But I will try to be practical and to respond to your question, Margherita. And I would say that the mismatch we really see is that there's is between the policy ambition versus the farm level deployment. So I think, Stefanos, you rightly highlighted that there are several opportunities to do so in terms of fostering nutrient management. Yet, we see in practice and also through our research at Yara that a lot more could be achieved without having major additional burdens at farm level, but rather as opportunities. If we take just the example of digital and precision farming, our studies have shown that simple tools that using satellite imagery to fine-tune fertilization at farm level in one field that can be very variable needs, or using decision support tools that look into what are the exact needs of the crops. All these tools can improve the efficiency of the nutrients applied by farmers by 10% alone. So it's just about adding another level of knowledge to the current fertilization practices. Yet, there is a limited uptake, and I think it could be another whole webinar on what could we do in terms of fostering that uptake. Certainly, trust is one, certification is another, but it's also, as Tassos mentioned at the beginning, how can we connect sustainability in its different pillars in specific indicators? And scientists across Europe and also worldwide have developed a so-called nutrient use efficiency indicator that is a very good indicator that combines all these pillars of sustainability, connecting between the amount of kilogram of nitrogen applied and the number of kilogram of crops that are removed. So it's a very simple metric that helps farmers to better target fertilization without simply just thinking, I will lower my inputs. Sometimes, yes, the ultimate goal would be that farmers would significantly reduce their amount of fertilizers. But if it's for better use and less nutrient losses, this is better for the economics of the farm and also for the biodiversity in terms of deposition. Finally, one element that also needs to be considered in order to overcome this mismatch is that we are operating in a context where our farmers, especially arable farmers, are facing very low crop prices, very low producer prices. And this is, of course, a challenge in terms of fertilizers affordability. And of course, if we combine this with the current trade pressures, there is a real opportunity to further optimize the use of nutrients. And this can be done not just with tools, but also by looking into what kind of fertilizers farmers are using and how to switch to maybe nutrient forms that have a better environmental impact, but also as to when those fertilizers are applied. So connecting with the current CAP, because I will not start to extrapolate on what could be done with the future CAP. In the current CAP, we know 2 member states who took very different approaches with the current eco schemes. For instance, in Denmark, there is the possibility for farmers to either do crop rotation or to switch to using precision farming with the same impact of reducing nutrient losses. So that's one way to foster nutrient use efficiency further. And another one, which is more about improving the environmental and climate impacts of fertilizers, is done in Greece, where farmers are receiving an additional payment when they go for fertilizers that are reducing emissions to the air or the emissions to the climate and the atmosphere, for instance, ureas or nitrification inhibitors. So there is potential, but a lot is still untapped.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. Actually, you gave me an input to have a smooth transition to our last panelist. So I will now close the loop, addressing my question to Gerard from Wageningen. And as you have heard at the very beginning in the Tassos message, we were talking about indicators of for soil health and the importance of having clear indicators and common methodologies. Referring to that, my question to you, Gerard, is more related to NutriBudget project, as you are currently developing the Nutri KPI. So how do you think this can help to reconcile the crop production and the farming practices?
Thank you for the invitation, Margarita, to reflect on the use of indicators. Also in the evaluation of CAP payments, I think that's a very valuable development that we actually measure and monitor the performance of sustainability measures on farm level. And from a scientific point of view, we know that it's important to quantify emissions of nutrients in view of, let's say, the actual site conditions. And particularly across Europe, the landscapes are very variable, and these eco schemes and CAP extensions actually motivate farmers to apply measures that are actually relevant for their own farming systems. And that indeed leads to the question that we need indicators, because compliance with farm stewardship, it's needed, but then the indicators need to be scientifically sound, informative also for farmers themselves, linking actually their own management to the impact in the surroundings. And that sounds easy, but in reality, it's a little bit more complex, as we discovered in the NutriBudget project. If I give an example for soil health indicators, for example, if you link them to nutrient management, it is, of course, essential to adapt the inputs in view of what plants actually need. And that requires much more than a simple measurement of soil properties and the definition of single targets or single thresholds for fertilizer, manure, or nutrient inputs. And I think the main reason for that is that the soil health indicators, as well as the nutrient indicators, they all contribute to multiple soil functions, and not only crop production, but also climate mitigation, water retention and purification, biodiversity, nutrient circularity, all the issues mentioned by the first speaker today. And strengthening the linkages between these indicators and environmental impacts is very important. I supported by the remark of Tiffany in the last minutes in relation to what is the contribution of fertilizer and nitrogen use efficiency to the impact. And I think these simple indicators can be very helpful, but there's also more to evaluate. And we also know that the total emissions can exceed also the acceptable thresholds, even with high NUA. And then we have a discussion what is actually reasonable in a certain region, knowing that site conditions control these evaluation. And that's what we developed in the NutriBudget project together with a lot of partners across Europe, where we defined a common methodology linking carbon and nutrient budgets, so the difference between inputs and outputs, to what's actually needed to protect the environment in view of climate, water quality, water quantity, biodiversity, but also in view of what's needed for crop production and crop quality. And we used a data-driven modeling approach, linking the actual inputs or surpluses, being the budgets in this case, to what's actually needed in view of the location where you are. And then it really matters if you are in the Netherlands or in Italy or in France, because the conditions control also what will happen with the emissions and what will happen with the impacts of these emissions. And I think that by that approach that we did, we developed a holistic, integrative approach to quantify the sustainability of farming practices without actually solving them, because it needs a sort of societal debate about we cannot solve everything on each place. And because there are ecosystem services that are in contradiction with each other. And that's also the challenge for farming. And I think indicators are in that sense helpful when they support farmers to to know the impact of the management and to support the decision how to evaluate these impacts together. And then I give my challenge back to actually the industry, knowing that we have the algorithms, knowing that we have models to quantify the impacts, to make it site-specific. How can we actually bring that knowledge up to farm level into decision support tools or guidelines across Europe?
Thank you very much, Gerard, for your input. I will then give the word again to Ludwig, that will take up your challenge to Tiffany, and we'll move forward with the panel discussion.
Yeah, Gerard has already passed somehow the ball to Tiffany, and I will then ask Tiffany, in view that we have indicators, even if they are not perfect, and in view that you have tools to read the indicators and to transfer the knowledge or the indications that are given by the indicators to knowledge for the farmers, what additional political and societal, whatever support could you imagine to need to increase the presence, the use, and the distribution of these tools that need, of course, we need application of the tools also to improve them. We need to work in practice to get a better, let's say, in-depth understanding of what is going on.
And thank you for that, Ludwig. I would like to build on what you also said, Gerard. And I think it would be a major milestone from the NutriBudget project to be able to connect the nutrient budget, the carbon budget, and the crop needs, because this would enable also to have a proper metric that covers the different dimensions that are related to nutrient management. So I look forward to see more findings, because this integrated approach, this holistic approach, might also facilitate the uptake of such indicators. And it's really essential because fertilization is crop site soil specific. So we need to have an indicator that is flexible enough to consider what happens in the field. And that also connects with the point that you made, Anna, earlier, that we have, and so as you summarized it, Ludwig, that we have a wider basket with less eggs. If that's the case, it's all the more important to go for the approaches that can deliver the most in terms of increasing farmers' competitiveness, improving fertilizer affordability, also improving the further reduction of nutrient losses. So I think what can be done is to see, we of course have to see how the current CAP negotiations evolve, if there are moves to also reconsider the financial dotation of the CAP as it's currently presented. But if there is sufficient budget in the CAP in the future, that could be an opportunity to also reward further practices and actions of farmers at the farm level related to the indicators that NutriBudget is currently developing. And also we could connect also with potentially investment support that will help farmers to be properly equipped in order to deliver in line with those indicators. And finally, there might be also an opportunity for some synergies. As you might know, the European Commission is currently working on the so-called Sustainability Benchmark Initiative. I hope that the findings of the NutriBudget project could be used in that context to also make sure that we have a consideration of the different pillars of sustainability, environmental, economic, and also social in terms of the local, regional priorities. Because yes, the nutrient management challenge isn't the same if we talk the Netherlands or if we consider different regions in Greece. We have too much nutrients from organic origin in parts of Europe, but we also have too little in other parts of Europe. And this is this balance that we need to adjust and support farmers in adjusting.
Thank you very much. And I may pass the ball again to Stefanos, and particularly address the question that farmers who use indicators and use tools as those developed by the NutriBudget project, are not awarded if they reduce the emissions. Do you think that there could be some mechanism in future that awards farmers for lowering, for reducing emissions?
That's an interesting discussion, Ludwig. Hopefully, there's an indicator that rewards them rather than takes away income from them, because this is also another argument in this discussion. You are talking about a system of performance-based support, whereas today we're talking about an area-based support on the basis of practices. That's why all the indicators today related to the Common Agricultural Policy, the so-called performance measuring efficiency framework, the PMF, is based on the amount of practices that are being taken and a percentage of land that these practices are currently occupying. Moving to a performance-based support system, I'm not very sure that many farmers would be happy with it. Because even though that you see, for example, there is a recent study where we have, for example, the indication that CAP strategic plans have reduced actually the greenhouse gas emissions, have supported at least to their reduction. I mean, it's questionable to see what has been happening with other areas, for example, or the actual effect of conditionality itself. I'm not so optimistic that this is easy to pass. It really requires, but it's a very, personally, I'm a pro for it, but it is really a discussion of whether it is something that farmers would be accepting to, because, this involves uptake of a lot of digital tools, uptake a lot of investment, because it's not very simple things to have. For example, it's simple for us. Maybe it's easy to say that can put a few sensors on the soil and check what's happening with the nutrient balance. Whereas today, for example, we don't have reported nutrient balance for like half of the member states if you go on the Eurostat website. And on the other hand, you have farmers of 12% of only 12% of farmers are below the age of 40. So talk to the average age 57 years old farmer of uptaking a digital farming tool, let alone the sensors, to discuss about his performance, environmental performance, let alone the small amount of hectare per farmer, which is on average 5 hectares per farmer today in the EU, with, of course, limited investment opportunities and definitely very low returns on investments perspectives. So I'm a bit not so very much optimistic in this regard, but it would be a very good initiative and very good to have. Actually, this reminds me a lot of the JRC recent study where they have categorized farming practices included into the CSPs. They have categorized them according to their impact on climate and climate adaptation and environmental impacts, which is very interesting to have. And it can be used definitely for deriving some conclusions on how the CSPs have impacted environmental aspects in this respect.
Thank you, Stefanos. Just taking the opportunity to pass on the ball to Margarita again and to the farmer's perspective. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Ludwig. Yes, indeed. Actually, Anna, I would ask you from your perspective, looking ahead, what do farmers need to successfully improve the nutrient management and staying economically viable, and also to be rewarded and recognized for the implementation of sustainable practices? What do you think should be prioritized in there?
Well, that's a big question.
Big question.
Following up on what Stefanos said, before I said I was not as optimistic. Now I'm in the same line. So I want to reiterate that. Indeed, because it was mentioned that this move towards result-based, yes, and having the indicators for it. Yes, it is a good direction. Are we ready for that? No, area-based is still at the moment the only feasible solution. Also because we need to remember that the CAP actually sets rules for all types of farms, all types of farmers in the EU, right? So there is this commonality that makes it then difficult to have this result based, even if again direction should be going in that way, which is this idea that to actually focus on less. So both Tassos and Gerard mentioned soil. We are rather also in the same line, that it makes sense because if you have a lot of indicators for all types of things, and often there's also trade-offs, if we can focus on those that are more cost effective and more practical, and also those that are more closer to the farmer, it's easier. So soil management, land management and soil management, it's much more local, much farmers already generally speaking know about their soils and the impact on their soils. Yes, there's room for improvement, but it is a good start, and especially because soil has impacts on other indicators, biodiversity, water, air emissions. It does make sense to focus on that one. So that trying to simplify a bit and make it more practical makes sense. Also, this idea that don't expect perfect, just expect that we go in the right direction seems to me a good way. And also takes into account that things are keep on evolving. Innovation is there. Science also changing, and the digitalization especially changing fast, right? So a lot of the previous panelists mentioned it, and we need to take that into account, that the things are improving, and well, at least in terms of those tools, they are improving. Yes. Uptake could be better, definitely. Yes, more digital tools speaking to each other would help. Yes, being a bit more or less costly would help as well. Yes, more knowledge sharing in that sense also will be helpful. But as long as we go in that direction and we don't expect perfect now and all of farmers to reply to all these indicators, and if they don't just focus on removing income rather than rewarding, that is the way that we shouldn't go, right? And there is some things, because I was a bit too negative before, there were some things that provide us a bit some hope, right? So there was all this discussion on carbon farming, right? There too, focusing on soil. Yes, we see that at the moment is going worse rather than better, but the idea is still good, right? We still a bit hopeful that we could make it a bit more pragmatic and actually making it work rather than what we have at the moment. Also with the bioeconomy strategy that we thought it was today, now it's Thursday. There's also we see some potentially positive ways forward with this recognition of innovation and increasing the toolbox. Let's hope it's just not rhetoric. So yes, there is also some few things that could help. Yes, will not be immediate. We also saw with the soil monitoring law, for instance, yes, some room of improvement, but don't expect it for tomorrow, right? Because yes, situation is complex. The economics are really complex. But as far as we go in the right direction, we shouldn't dismiss everything that has been already done.
Thank you, Anna, for this positive note. We know that we have a long process ahead, but I would like to hand up our panel discussion by listening from Gerard. So, Gerard, how do you think that research can help translate scientific findings into practical solutions from farmers? How we can bring farmers close to the scientific findings and let's say close the knowledge gap that we might have now?
That's indeed also a very big question, Margarita. So I can only touch a couple of things there. First, if you allow me, I'd like to reflect also on the comments of Stefanos. I think he's right. I agree with them. And when we look to the Violent Agriculture, that it's mostly means-based and not performance-based. And that's easy, simple, and it has also its impact. And in that view, I might be a little bit too optimistic about performance-based indicators. But I also see that the fuel risk and emissions, they are highly variable over space and time. The challenges are variable over space and time, and the impact of emissions are also variable over space and time. And so I think, and on the long term, given all the challenges that we have for climate, biodiversity, water, and so on, it's almost impossible to stay on the means-based policies. But that might be, I don't know exactly how it will evolve. I see that it also increased the administrative burden, and it requires more changes in governance tools and so on. But the challenges are also big, and evaluating and monitoring and assessing on performance-based level might be a potential future in that case. Coming back to your question, I think science is never effective if it stays, let's say, on my desk. So it needs to be implemented, tested, evaluated with advisors, extension services, farmers that have real practices experience. And it should be connected to the real farm economic performance, because that really motivates. If not, then we can develop a lot of indicators without actually becoming useful. And let's say the current living labs and lighthouses you mentioned, I think these already are helpful, but the impact can be strengthened much more if we connect that to the actual extension services being already in use across Europe. All agricultural labs, there are a lot of advisory companies actually in use, facilitating, let's say, the planning phase and the activities done on farm level. And I see there a lot of opportunity by strengthening the connection between science and actual the extension services and farming and industry, supporting farmers to do the right things on their local scale. And last thing that I like to mention is that what I see evolving is that also the scientific developments are more and more developing into open source communities where people work together, share modeling code, share toolings. So much more than in the past where projects develop a toolbox and when the project finalizes, then everything stops. So there is much more opportunities now to bring in the knowledge and to the community, also to the scientific community and to the other companies building decision support tools with AI and all the IT developments ongoing that actually can help to translate the knowledge into actual decision support on farm level via phone or via computer. Doesn't matter for me now, but I think that is in development. It's growing and it has also a lot of opportunities for the future. And if I look in at least in Western Europe, I also see that other big stakeholders from let's say companies actually invest in farming systems because they have to prove also their environmental impact on outside their own scope, and that also stimulates monitoring of indicators and also valorization of indicators on farm level. And as that's not organized, the science will actually not be being implemented. So I see a strong connection between science, education, and also with companies actually around the farming systems that actually evaluate their own farm performance based on the data that the farmer is willing to share. And I know it will take time. It's not being solved in 1 or 2 or even not 5 years, but I think it's still an evolution that I like to continue and to contribute to at least in the coming decades.
Thank you very much, Gerard, for your feedback. I see that Stefano raised the hand, and unfortunately, Stefano, I give you the word to you, but unfortunately, we are running out of time, and the Renew to Cycle panel session should have already started 10 minutes ago. So I know that the conversation is interesting, but I just let you comment as you raise your hand, and then we give the floor immediately to Renew to Cycle. Hans is
Just 1 minute, because I was a bit pessimistic when it came to the indicators. No, look, the indicators are very nice to have. Performance-based indicators are very nice to have. And I guess, and I think they might be contributing a lot to the under development currently benchmarking tool that the Commission wants to develop for comparison, for example, between farmers against their peers. Because this is the aim of the benchmarking tool. So in this perspective, as Gerard put it, it's very important to have such indicators, and we welcome the work that is being done, and we want the support from projects like this one. So that's the one thing, and the second thing is that the issue with supporting all our monetary support to farmers based on the performance-based indicator is simply difficult, simply because agriculture is based on weather. Like, imagine that you do everything you can to improve your indicators and suddenly you receive a flood. Everything booms off and you're destroyed. So this is a very simple reason why personally I would be looking at it a bit more skeptically. But definitely when it comes to comparison reasons between farmers, or when it comes to tools like corporate social responsibility from the side of companies, yes, totally support. I'm sorry, I was a bit not very optimistic in the previous discussion, but just to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefanos. So I would like then to close this panel session by thanking all the panelists and of course Ludwig as well. It was a really interesting discussion and exchange, and within NutriBudget, for NutriBudget, actually this is a multi-step process. So we will keep discussing about nutrient management next year in a policy workshop. So you will be hearing from us soon, and all the process will end up with a policy recommendation. So thank you again to you all, and I leave the floor to Hans